So you probably know now that a bit ago, I made a video where I ranked every single Glitch Productions show, a video that I highly recommend you go watch before this one. However, after seeing certain people do this, I decided not just to rank the shows themselves, but something else about them, and that thing is their villains. Glitch has some great antagonistic characters, with some being more entertaining than the show they come from, but there are quite a few stupid and lame ones. So today we're here to rank them all from worst to best. Now notice how I said we're. Well, that's because today I'm going to be collaborating with two of my friends for this video, G-Man-AB and Turtlebox11.
Hello there, it's me, the guy has nothing better to do but play Eternal Towers of Hell for a week straight.
It's nice for me to take part in this video today, and I very much appreciate the opportunity given to me by Smith himself. So I hope I don't disappoint with the commentary that I am giving today.
Now, before we can actually get started talking about the villains and all, I need to list some ground rules as to what counts and does not count as a villain. First of all, the villain must be in an antagonistic role in at least 2 episodes of the show. Now, this is probably the one rule that might be broken, and that's because that I'll include villains from shows like Digital Circus and Ultra Jump Mania who have only ever served an antagonistic role in 1 episode, but because those shows didn't really have many villains to begin with, I included them. Rule number 2, the character cannot be a copy and paste henchman character. Characters like Benedict's buff guys or the scientists that work with Lux do not count because they are just the same character but copied and pasted to infinity. And the final and most important rule? Those are the only 2 rules. After deciding which villains we should or should not count, we ended up getting a total of 14 villains to use for this list. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. And also, if there's any characters that I didn't put on this list, I'll put them at the end of the video. So now with that out of the way, let's get started.
What's wrong? Scared to face yourself?
Now, who do you think is the worst Glitch villain to ever exist? Sounds like a hard question, right? Well, it's actually kind of easy. So for us, the worst Glitch Productions villain is Shadow Maggie from Sunset Paradise. I will say, the idea for her character is pretty cool, but she doesn't really get to do much in terms of stopping the main character, Maggie, at all, since she's just the negative comprised thoughts of Maggie. Now, to give her some credit, she doesn't necessarily need to actually physically hurt Maggie for her to be a good villain, and just manipulate her mentally, and she's pretty decent for what she is in the 1st and 3rd episodes of the show. But by the 3rd episode, she becomes glass-breaking that MP3 sound effect, since Maggie told her to shut up. But they just keep bringing her back, and she serves absolutely no purpose to the plot in any sort of way. Maggie already came over her mental issues. She doesn't need to go through them again. If she was just in the 1st and 3rd episode, she might have been a bit higher on this list because it felt like she actually had a little bit of purpose as to what she was doing. But with the more they include her, it doesn't really feel like she adds anything. To sound like I'm not unintentionally repeating points, her name, Shadow Maggie, is just really lame and uncreative. And her best example of being absolutely pointless is in the last episode where she just says to Maggie, "Well, I guess your life has gone better now," and then completely disintegrates. Either just never have her show up again after the 10th fight scene, or better yet, never have her show up again after the 3rd episode. How many more damn ways can I say her inclusion after the 3rd episode is pointless? To stop myself from repeating what feels like the same point over and over again, I'll go over something else I don't like about her. The entire reason why she's evil in the first place. Her whole point is that she's supposed to make Maggie feel insecure about herself for, the things that she did that weren't really her fault. While this ain't a bad concept, there's 2 problems with that. 1, Glitch already did a villain like this that's way better and way higher on this list because of that. And 2, her insults are like playground insults. In the 3rd episode, she says to Maggie, "Oh, you didn't invite all your friends on this trip because you get way in your plans." Like, she didn't have plans, she just wanted to take a mental health break. Sorry if it does feel like I'm making up a few reasons as to why I don't like her. I just really did not. And I'll say this, she's down here at the bottom because she doesn't serve that much relevance to the plot, but she is more tolerable to listen to than the next villain on this list.
I told you it would get worse if you followed me.
Okay, so I went a little bit off script for that one, but I'm gonna go completely off script for this one because I think what I wrote through the script for this one sucks, and I just want to let all my rage out on her. So, Whisk is easily my least favorite thing about Sunset Paradise as a whole. Now, you may be wondering to yourself, if Whisk is my least favorite aspect of the show, then why is she ranked higher than Shadow Maggie? Well, you see, I think Shadow Maggie is just generally a worse villain since I feel as if she's less important to the plot than Whisk is. However, at the very least, Shadow Maggie wasn't annoying, she was just really boring. But Whisk? Oh, I hate this girl. Her whole character is that, like, she's a god criminal with this, like, mask on, but then without the mask, she's just a wuss. And I feel like any weird human being that hasn't showered in at least 5 months will have, like, a body pillow of this person. They try and make her, like, really cutesy and stuff, but it just makes me hate her even more. Her design, her voice, regardless whether she's serious or she's not serious, makes me mad. And I have to question, I know the mask she has this little, like, terabyte in it, but, like, does it really improve her fighting skills that much? I mean, take this scene in episode 4, for example. She has all the time in the world to just beat them up. Especially because most of the time it's just spent Ori monologuing about how smart he is. And she just does nothing! Speaking of this scene, they also talk about how both in this scene and earlier in this episode, that maybe Whisk can, change ways and become a good guy or whatever. And then in the 6th episode, she's just like, nah, I don't feel like it. So then why even set this up at all? And would you believe me if I said that there is only one other thing that I didn't like about her? So obviously, villains and stuff don't really end up with good face, especially for what they did not being so good. Like how in this show, the Funky Force and Spud Duds do community service, and Benedict just dies. And while for her, Benedict's punishment might be a bit much, she might do community service like the other two, right? Well, no. She gets away completely scot-free of her actions. She robbed a museum and almost killed someone, yet somehow it wasn't enough for her to not get any punishments. Now, those 2 complaints I just made could be because that Whisk was going to have a spin-off show by Glitch. And when I heard about this news, I was like, seriously? Her? The girl who started crying on the floor because 2 people were looking at her without her mask on? She needed an entire spin-off show? I wish I could use the gun that she uses so that I can remind her about the time she saw a pickle on the floor. So with that, we pretty much rounded out all the bad villains on this list, so we'll just move on now to the okay ones. And I'll let my friends take care of this category.
We don't talk about Joe Fresh!
The Funky Force is a strange, albeit humorous squad, but I do find their backstory to be strange compared to the other villains on this list. Falling or coming into contact with radioactive substances usually result in a more chaotic power like enhanced strength or speed, and just gaining the ability to dance well seems a bit underwhelming for the struggles that they get put through. But I do enjoy how they used to be heroes. It's fun to see how they transferred from the light to the dark sides, and how external forces affected their behavior. But in the end, dancing isn't a very impressive power, so they get the number 12 spot on this list.
The Angel Head first arrives in episode 3 of The Amazing Digital Circus. It has an interesting concept, but it is not all that great. Its purpose was to eat Pomni and Kinger, but whenever it opened its mouth, it hypnotized whoever's looking at it to imagine something that was important to them, drawing themselves closer to it. But alas, that's only shown once, and then they easily escaped, and the exact next scene it gets shot. So, not very long lived. But it does lead them to the next scene, because it's an angel, so that they go to hell. Everyday stuff, you know?
How despicable! A rabbitoid that runs its mouth in the presence of my royal figure!
The Glint Queen is, well, one sort of 2-episode villain that's great for one of Kane's adventures of sorts. The main thing that really makes her a villain would be that she captured and ate Zubul, but didn't really do much else other than that. I mean, yeah, she comes back in episode 4 to get food, but for the whole villain aspect of her, not much was there to be honest with you. She mostly got beat up by Jax just saying mean things to her, and then that leading the Kaufman falling from the ceiling, rapidly attacking her, and they just leave. That's it.
Wait, you have friends?
Finally, we're now moving on to the actually good villains on this list. And to kick it off, we have Evelyn from Metarunner. Weirdly, Evelyn feels like the kind of character I would hate, a spoiled brat with an annoying voice and ego. But shockingly, she's actually pretty tolerable. I feel like more often than not, the things she does are actually just kind of funny. I really like that scene in episode 2 of season 2 where she took that one guy's dating simulator and said, "Say goodbye to your waifus." That scene was pretty funny. I also feel as if she serves as a good antagonistic threat for season 2 and 3, especially in season 3. I think, though, probably my favorite thing related to her in this whole show, though, was in the season 2 finale when Theo and Tari had to try and fight her while she was playing as some sort of corrupted boss. Mostly just because in video games, I really like boss fights, which you'll probably see later in the list. She was also great in season Season 3, since like I said, she serves as an actual genuine threat since she can literally kill anyone in the game, even when she shouldn't be able to. Overall, I think she's a pretty good character. She may not be very high up on this list, but that's mostly because the villains above her are just better.
I no longer just want her abilities for Tazcore. I want her.
Lux may be a villain, but he seems more in line with our world's corporate business schmucks. And most of Mr. Lux's choices were made in a grasp for power. Harming others is more collateral damage than anything. No matter how morally corrupt it is to take a sentient AI like Tari for a business, we use AI in our daily lives and don't really respect either. But often, he has been seen using physical force to prevent others from getting in his way of absolute power. And he definitely deserved that shot to the face. Overall, I believe that Derek Lux was an extremely arrogant nutjob that holds some antagonistic traits, but seeing as these people exist in the real world and we do nothing about them, I can't see a corrupt businessman being any higher on this list of actual lawbreakers.
Well, I guess he's dead.
So you may have noticed that the bottom 3 villains on this list have all been characters from Sunset Paradise. However, because we're on the good villains now, that means we have an actual good villain from the show. That villain, or I guess group of villains, of which being the Spud Duds. I don't find them to be very menacing or intimidating at all, but I do make up for that with their great comedic moments and their charming character designs. Especially the one with the fork and the stick of butter on their head. That's peak character design, I'm telling you. This is also gonna sound like a bit of a weird compliment, but I really like the weapons that they use. I just say that because I think they're really creative. Like their cherry bombs and also the giant potato peelers they have. Also, this isn't in the script, but the guy you see on screen right now, he's my favorite because his design is just really cool. Now, despite all the good things I have to say about these guys, there is one kind of big problem I have with them, involving this guy you see right now. Basically, this member gets kidnapped by Maggie and Ori and confesses to them that he wanted to be a famous musician because he stole a saxophone earlier in the episode. And Maggie and Ori use him to go find the other members. And then after like a 5-second conversation, he immediately joins their side. But then after they all get defeated, he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry for switching sides, despite the fact that in the 6th episode I then immediately go back to their side." And you know how I said he wanted to be a musician? Well, this doesn't ever get brought up again until the last episode when the Funky Force asks him if he wants to be a member with them. Also, this is a tad bit unrelated to them, but not entirely. But I also kind of question, like, how come despite the fact that they committed, like, pretty bad crimes, the Funky Force and Spud Duds only get away with doing community service? Like, shouldn't they be in prison, especially for, like, killing the mayor? Other than that, though, they're pretty good villains and enjoyable to watch, and are almost the best characters in the entire show. That part, though, we'll be getting to later.
You kids don't understand. I am the god of this world.
This might come across as like the second most controversial opinion of the whole video, but I genuinely think that Sheridan is the best villain in all of Metarunner. I've seen people talk about issues with Metarunner, specifically Season 3, and Sheridan seems to be one of those most common examples. But he's higher up compared to Lux and Evelyn for a few reasons. One of those reasons is that even though he doesn't sound like it, he's actually probably the most threatening character in the entire show, particularly in episode 6 when he transports everyone with a Metarunner arm into the virtual world like Tari and makes them fight, giving him complete control over the situation. Speaking of the Metarunner arm and how he was the creator of it, I really like his backstory before he was revealed as a villain, with him being the creator of Tari and being the reason why Masa shot Lux.
Having Sheridan as a surprise villain gave me much joy, having the surprise of someone so kind-hearted have such a bad side. But considering the strength he had compared to the other 2 Metarunner villains, I believe that Sheridan is a spectacular villain.
Okay, so you know how I said that Sheridan is probably the second most controversial opinion on this list? Well, this is probably the most controversial opinion on this list. He doesn't even have that much screen time, yet I like him more than all of Metarunner and most of Sunset Paradise's villains. That villain I'm talking about being the Crab King. The reason I like him so much is that he's styled like a Nintendo villain. Obviously, this whole show goes for a Nintendo feel, and they nail that aspect with Crab King perfectly. His fight with Theo is basically just a video game boss fight, and if there's anything I love about video games, it's the boss fights. They're just nice little parts of the game where you get to fight a seemingly powerful foe, and even though most of them are easy, they're also just extremely fun. Also, he does the crab rave, so he's automatically one of the greatest villains of all time. And while this is probably the most disagreeable take of the whole video, I do still stand by my opinion that this guy is awesome.
And you're worthless and terrible. And if the company allowed it, I would straight up kill you myself.
If you really expected a villain from Murder Drones to be so low on the list, then you clearly haven't watched my channel before. And if you are that new viewer, then hey, thank you for sticking around this long. But anyways, Serial Designation J is, in our opinion, probably the most underrated villain in Murder Drones specifically. But before I talk about how she's a pretty great villain, there's one thing I wanted to mention specifically about her that I haven't really mentioned about the other characters, and that's her design. Compared to N and V, out of all the disassembly drones, she stands out the most because her design is just so unique from both of them. When you look at N and V, you can definitely see the similarities between the two and how they both wear coats and have like a very similar hairstyle. And when you compare the two of them to J, she has two ponytails and a suit on, which, you know, obviously makes her different between the two of them. And about her suit and tie, I have no idea if it was intentional or not, but you could take her wearing a suit and tie and with N and V wearing casual outfits, that she takes her job more seriously compared to the other two. Anyways, as for her character, yeah, she's great. I really love her dedication to the J.C. Jensen Company, like how in episode 1, and then she just proceeds to talk about how good the pen is really funny. I also like it when she's trying to be serious, because her body language and tone of voice gives off that impression really well. And if there's anything else I have to say about her that I really like her relationship between her and Tessa, especially in episode 5. It's really nice. Despite all these great things I have to say about her, though, there is one pretty big issue I do have with her. And if you're a Murder Drones fan like I am, then you'd probably know that it's the amount of screen time she gets. She only ever gets to serve a big role in the first and last episode, and kind of episode 5, but that doesn't really matter considering she has as much minutes of screen time as it takes to read a baby's picture book. But other than that, and the fact that she didn't die at the end of episode 8, she's a pretty great character. And for any of you out there who didn't get enough of Jay and want to see more of her, then I'd recommend you watch the merch video, specifically this one, because it feels like they give her more screen time in those than in the actual show itself. Though these videos do not really count towards this ranking for very obvious reasons.
Как они по-русски любят говорить. Ой, я должна была предположить, что кто-то сможет убежать через вентиляцию, используя выброшенное зеркало как ступеньки.
Doll is one of the few villains in Murder Drones, and is a great one at that. She's introduced by showing her off as a classmate waiting to go to the prom and ends up attempting to kill the main characters to avenge her family. Doll is like one of the crossroads between funny and deadly, with quotes like, "I should have predicted that they were going to escape into a ventilation shaft by using discard mirrors." Like, that's genius. Who thinks of that? Then later in the series, opening doors so the Sentinels can go and kill the main characters and runs away as if it's a normal Tuesday. Like, what? Glitch had executed Doll's role as a villain very well, but also showed off her aspects of wanting to save people and even the planet they were on, meaning she still cared for and didn't want to really see any of the drones die. She just did it because she was seemingly forced to becoming a villain after her parents were killed by them, which is still why she had some heart and didn't really want to have them interfere with her goals. She just wanted to survive and have what she wanted to be done. Its character is built like as great as Doll that really made me appreciate Murder Drones as a show.
No, slam the door. Come on, we practiced this. Try it again.
You know, it's kind of ironic, isn't it? My least favorite Glitch show, with what we'd consider to have the 3 worst villains on this list, also has one of the best that Glitch has ever made. Benedict Cumbersnatch is a villain that manages to perfectly be menacing and funny at the same time. Most of the jokes he makes in the show are probably some of the best in the whole show. Like in episode 1 when he tells the guy that he wants him to slam the door and not close it properly. Or that one part where he just starts swearing, both of which I found funny on my very first viewing of the show. He's also weirdly a genuinely good threat towards both the main characters and even his own henchmen. Just think about it for a minute. He killed the only sheriff in Port Aurora as an egg, hired 9 people to go after the main characters, and briefly killed Ori in episode 10. I also really love his design when it comes to facial expressions. It really looks like black rough crayon in his face, and it fits his character really well. When I saw certain people talk about the show, I didn't really see them talk about him at all, which is weird because he's the main villain, and also makes me sad because, you know, he's a great character and I wish he got more appreciation. Despite how great this guy is and how high I put him up on this list, there's one villain that's just slightly better than him.
Bad job, V.
Sin is currently my favorite character out of all the shows that Glitch has made so far, so this may come with a bit of bias, but the creators really outdid themselves with this one. One of my favorite parts about Sin is she's about the most human we'll get to see in Murder Drones, as most of the humans in the show are silhouettes. And Sin really allows us to get this clear view on what they look like. Sin's movements are mostly mannequin-esque, and that allows her to be a lot more expressive in her body language. She also seems to be in control for most of the time that she is on screen. Even when it's a 3 versus 1 in the final battle, Sin manages to hold her ground with a grin on her face, almost as if she's amused by the whole interaction. Despite the absolute solver, Sin is a very endearing robot, going to great lengths to help her fellow robots achieve a better life, even if that means the extinction of the human race. Overall, Sin is a great villain as she poses both as a monumental threat and a kind, endearing, soft side. And that is why we believe that Sin is the greatest villain that Glitch has made thus far.
And that was our ranking of every single Glitch Productions villain. But just before we end off this video, I wanted to give some honorable mentions to some characters who any diehard Glitch fans in the comments would probably say, hey, you forgot this character if I didn't mention them. And while I won't give my thoughts on them, I'll just say why I didn't include them on this list. First honorable mention goes to Belle. We didn't include her because even though she was one of the villains of Season 1, she did have a redemption arc and practically became one of the main characters of Season 2, and in Season 3 she wasn't a villain really, she was just under the control of Sheridan. The second honorable mention on this list goes to Alice. We didn't include her because she didn't fall under the rule of having an antagonistic purpose in more than one episode, since she only acted as an antagonist for the 6th episode. And I bet some of you might be wondering, if we didn't include her on this list, then how come we included the Gloink Queen, Angel, and Crab King? Since all of them also defy that rule. And it's because those characters come from shows that are either really short or don't have a lot of villains in them to begin with, which is why we counted them, since I wanted there to be at least one villain that could represent one of Glitch's shows each. But Murder Drones was longer than those shows in comparison, and there was already a decent amount of Murder Drones villains to pick from, which is why we didn't include her. And this last honorable mention, that of which being a 2-in-1, goes to Kane and Jax. I could see why anyone could think that either two of them would be considered villains, since Jax is a jerk and Kane is not really nice to anyone around him. However, I have a few arguments as to why I don't think that they're really villains. My argument for Kane is that he just simply is stupid and doesn't really understand the things that people like and don't like in the circus, but as shown many times in the show itself, has no ill intentions to anyone in the circus. My argument for Jax is that he is part of the cast of main characters, meaning that he can't really be considered a villain unless he's revealed to be a twist villain in the future, which has not happened yet. And speaking of being revealed to be a villain, my last point and probably strongest point is that none of them are, confirmed to be villains yet, so maybe they could be villains in the future, but as of right now, there's no confirmation that either of them are the antagonist of the series. And while I just thought about it now, I bet some people would probably think Kaufmo's a villain, but he's not really. He was just doing something that's out of his control. And that's pretty much it. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, then be sure to give it a like and subscribe, please. Also, go check out my friend G-Man AB. He does parkour stuff. It's pretty cool. Anyways,